So the first of the 5 shifts I'd like to share is one I'll do a bit of a deeper dive on first, and it's shifting from tactician to strategist. So shifting from tactician to strategist. Now, I think we've all gotten some feedback like this at some point in our career. Someone said to us at some point, you need to be more strategic, right? Some of you are nodding in recognition. So perhaps you delivered a presentation and someone pulled you aside and said, look, good job, that went well, but in future, I think you need to be a bit more strategic. Or perhaps you did a performance review with your manager, and one of the pieces of feedback you got was you need to be more strategic. Okay, but what the heck does that really mean? What does it look like to stop acting tactically and reactively and shift your mindset and behavior to thinking and operating more strategically? And is it even possible to do that when you don't have anyone to delegate to? Well, I had these questions too, and in search of answers, I had a conversation with Ellie Humphrey, whose role at the time was that she was a VP of Global Strategy with Medtronic. So her role was to travel around the world working with Medtronic's top leadership team to help them formulate and implement their strategy. And when I asked Ellie, what does it mean to be strategic? What is strategy? She gave this great quote. She said, strategy is just a fancy word for coming up with a long-term plan and putting it into action. Do you like that? Strategy is just a fancy word for having a long-term plan, putting it into action. So if you are thinking futuristically, looking towards the horizon, envisioning where you want to go, coming up with those goals, those milestones and the plan, and acting on that plan, that's it. You're operating more strategically. So think about what opportunities there might be for you to start to think and act a little more strategically than you do today. Someone who really made a dramatic pivot from tactician to strategist in her career is Donna Munch, one of my favorite leaders. And when she and I spoke, she was a VP of cloud operations with NetApp. And she told me the story about how early on in her career, she was known as the ultimate tactician, because she started out as a project administrator with HP and was really inspired by the work ethic that she saw in her father. And so she took on that work ethic herself and was known as someone who could come to work every day and crush the to-do list. No one could check tasks off the list like Donna. And yet she said it was so hard to unhook from that intoxicating buzz that you get from checking items off her to-do list. And so the day came when she saw a higher level role that she wanted, she aspired to move into, and she applied and was knocked back and told, no, we can't promote you. You're too valuable right now. No one can figure out how to replace you. So that was her big pivot point and her aha moment. And she said, my get it done mentality as the go-to person and the only one who knew how to do certain things got in my way of moving ahead, and I couldn't step out of my role to take on new responsibilities. So in that moment, she started to look for ways to step back from being the ultimate tactician to be a little more strategic, more planful, more forward-thinking. And as she did that, people started to notice the leader in her, and she was given people to manage and teams to lead, and started to move away from that personal brand as the ultimate tactician and became known as a strategist. But she didn't stop there. She ultimately became known as an enabler, someone who shares the vision and the big picture and enables people with the skills and resources they need to contribute. So she ultimately went from tactician to strategist to enabler, leading large organizations. And so one of the conversations I had with Donna was to understand what, tips and all can she recommend for those of us who want to shift our mindset from tactician to strategist. So she had this great recommendation. It's called your time portfolio. And Donna said, take a look at 1 month in the past on your calendar. So analyze 1 month in your calendar and color code your activities. One color for tactical stuff, the little things, the busy work, the reactive tasks, checking off the list, and then use a different color for the bigger picture, more forward-thinking, more strategic tasks. And then after you've done that color coding, step back and ask yourself, what do I see? What themes are there? And what might I do differently? And so if this resonates for you, I really encourage you to take this away as a piece of homework. Look at 1 month on your calendar, analyze tactical versus strategic, color code it, take a step back, and then ask yourself, what tactical activities might I be able to let go of? And then what could be some more strategic activities to do more of instead? And so I know you don't have time to sit here in this moment right now and do the exercise, but could you just kind of think ahead and see if you can predict what might be one or two of those tactical activities to step away from, and what might be one or two more strategic things you could do instead? Can I give you just about 30 seconds to think through what your answers might be? Come up with one or two answers. Think it through, maybe put pen to paper or make a note on whatever device you have. So what are some tactical things to let go of? What are some strategic things you might want to do more of? All right, who feels like you need more time on that exercise? Like another year, for example. No, just kidding. So what I want you to do now is just turn to one or two people sitting nearest you. So just arrange yourself into groups of 2 or 3 and have a quick conversation about that. I'll give you about a minute to go and compare and contrast your ideas. Okay, go. Could we maybe hear from one or two of you with what answers came up for you? Because this is actually one of my favorite things to listen into. What are some of the things, the tactical things you'd like to let go of? Oh, wow, over here so quickly. Can we get the mic out to you? Oh, yeah, and we'll get the mic so that everyone can hear. Yes.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you just talked about earlier, where, you know, if you're known as a person who gets stuff done, or like you have this tribal knowledge of what's like relevant, like people always reach out to you. And if you're like a regular nice person, you end up like helping them. And sometimes it takes away from, you know, like it takes time to do those things. So I'm hoping that through this process, I figure out a way to kind of let people know that I might not always have the time to respond. Not that I don't want to or I can't, but I just need to be focusing on other things. So that's the tactical activities that I hope to let go of. And strategically, I think to your point, like just focusing more on like the long-term vision, like 2 years down the line, what do I want the brand to do, et cetera. That just looking at it now, it would be helpful, because otherwise you get caught up a lot in the operational stuff of the day-to-day. So just, I think the color coding is great. And also maybe like blocking future time to make sure that you put it on calendar and just force yourself to kind of think about it would probably be a good idea.
Isn't that great? So blocking the strategic thinking time on your calendar. Could you get an elbow bump from the person sitting next to you? That is fantastic. No, you'd prefer a fist bump, a pat on the back, all of the above. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm reminded of that phrase, our behavior teaches people how to treat us. So kind of training people that you're not the go-to person for that stuff, but rather come to me for this more strategic stuff over here. Thanks. Great answers, by the way. Maybe one more person. So what did you notice you'd like to let go of that's tactical? What might you do instead that's more strategic? Looking for a volunteer. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to volunteer the person sitting next to you. Any takers? Thank you.
I think, first of all, what Verity and I talked about is it's really hard to let go of those tactical things. Maybe, and I'm sure it's not just Logitech, but who do you give them to? I mean, and Verity, I felt like you also said, well, some of those you have to do because that's just being a team player. You can't be like, oh, I don't want to do that because, like, that's beneath me, or that's just kind of not a Logitech thing, right? Everybody jumps in, everybody does that stuff, you know, you do the grunt work, so it's super hard. So I think that was most of our conversation. The only thing that I said I would try to do is we're trying to develop a new template for the way we communicate out to not only just our Logitech salespeople, but even our external people. So I had said maybe once our group has that template in place, we fortunately have an intern in our Hong Kong office that maybe I could give him that project.
Fabulous.
To take everybody's biweekly communication and put it in the template, you know, make it look nice. That way, you know, like you said, maybe he learns it's a project he can learn a little bit, and And I do block thinking time off on my calendar, but it often gets sucked up with the other tactical things that you didn't get done.
Of course.
So.
All right. Elbow bump, fist bump, whatever your choice is there. And did that resonate for a lot of people that, yes, you can identify the tactical stuff, but then what? And so I heard optimizing processes, creating a more efficient flow if possible, but also finding who might be the up and comer for whom it might be a great training and development opportunity. So you will in this environment have to think fairly creatively and strategically. I'll point out too, on page 96 in the book, another tool is called the not to do list. The not to do list, do you like that? It's the opposite of a to do list. And it's where you create a list of things you give yourself permission to not have to do. You can have one for work, have one for home. Yoga has been on mine for at least 15 years. It's staying on there. I just wanted to direct your attention to page 96 and the not to do list. Be creative with it. Yeah, one executive said, I will not run or jog unless being chased.